Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. It's pretty easy to feel disillusioned and cynical about all of the different things going on in the world. There's so many different hate-filled tragedies that are happening, and it can often feel like people are either ignorant to the problems that are happening or apathetic. They just don't care. If I have learned anything from time travel related media, and probably more importantly from day-to-day life and, being a human being, not everything needs some big grandiose change. It's the small, little changes that actually have a surprisingly large impact. Today, I'm going to talk about some of those small efforts, and in particular, some of the causes that I support that maybe aren't world-changing, but do have an impact. Trans Lifeline. I have written way more eloquent thoughts about this on the Race Against Time's website, but the too long didn't read of this topic. Trans people are discriminated against an awful lot for no reason other than existing, and that trans rights are human rights. This is a gross oversimplification of the problem. There is a lot more to why these hate-filled efforts are taking place, and there's a lot more at stake than just trans lives. That is the Cliff's Notes version. I do not have the vocabulary to do this topic justice, so I'm going to leave it at that and hope that you understand. In the last few years, we've changed the charity that the Race Against Time supports to Trans Lifeline, in part because of the work that it's doing. There are all of these problems that are happening in the world, and Trans Lifeline, as an example, is helping people today. It's helping people now. Trans Lifeline offers a number of different services. In particular, it offers a hotline service which allows trans folks to get help when they're in crisis from supportive trans folk. It is a great example of how small efforts make a difference because most of its funding comes from small donations, not from big corporations or anything like that, or the government. They come from people. They come from people. Take This. I think Take This is a tongue-in-cheek nod to the idea of in Zelda, where it's dangerous to go alone, take this. They're an organization that is focused on decreasing the stigma and increasing support for mental health resources for folks in the gaming community and the gaming industry. In particular, if you've been to a convention where they've been there, you might have noticed one of the services that they offer, which is AFK rooms, which are places where people can decompress. They're quiet spaces in what can be an overwhelming environment. They also run panels, workshops, consultations, and produce a ton of interesting publications and articles that people can use that talk about these issues and ways to resolve them. Cosplay Survivor Support Network. They provide a ton of resources for the cosplay community around things like preventing abuse, harassment, stalking, all of those kinds of related behaviors and ways to prevent it in the first place. They run a number of different panels and workshops at conventions talking about a bunch of different things, in particular around how cosplay is not consent is not a sufficient policy when it comes to preventing harassment, but they also run a lot of programming at conventions to kind of help open people's eyes to these problems and also to talk about things that people can do to prevent them. One of the most interesting services that they offer, and I think is also the most popular, is they offer this idea of convention report cards, where you can go look up a convention and see how it is doing with regards to harassment. Does the convention define what harassment is? Does it have a good policy around what to do if harassment is experienced? There's a more detailed list of criteria on their website, but it gives you like a scorecard to see how conventions are doing in terms of preventing harassment. Spoiler alert, a lot of conventions are not doing very well. The Humane Society International. This is the biggest organization on my list, and probably the hardest to pin down in terms of what they do, but generally what they aim to do is to make conditions more humane for animals, whether that's in industries, even if they're eventually going to be slaughtered, like for beef, but even in terms of animal cruelty and animal testing. I'm gonna try not to cry when I do this, but there's this really effective video that they've produced in a campaign called Save Ralph. And it's got a bunch of famous people in it, and that's not important. But it follows the life of a rabbit as though it was anthropomorphized. And it shows the kind of awful things that they do to animals when they're testing them. Oh, wow, nope, I couldn't prevent this. There was no way I could have seen this coming. That's a lie. It is tragic. It is absolutely devastating. Just thinking about it right now is wrecking me. I'll include it in the links, but I warn you that it is, even though it is, well, one, it's claymation, so if that is upsetting to you, don't watch it. But also it talks about and demonstrates the awful things that happen, and it's tragic. It's just tragic. I'm crying thinking about it. Wow, that's hard. This is hard. Okay. Another cause that I support is the Rabbit Rescue. It's a local charity, but as it turns out, it is the largest of its kind in Canada, which is to say the largest rabbit rescue in Canada. Primarily, they're dedicated to saving rabbits from situations where they're neglected, risk illness, are abandoned, all of that kind of stuff. In less cruel examples, a lot of their work is rescuing rabbits from kill shelters. No fault to these shelters. There are a lot of animals and they have no place to go, and so they kill them, which is not great, but kind of understandable. And they rescue rabbits from there and find them homes. But in a much more tragic example, a lot of rabbits are just dumped out in the wild. And they can't, they don't do well in the wild. Domestic rabbits are not intended to go outside. Why did I think this was a good idea? A lot of these are registered charities, so even though it's not the important part of donating or supporting them, if you do donate to them, you can often get a tax credit back, which kind of further incentivizes helping out the causes. Why am I sitting here crying and talking to you? It's not because I'm here to try to convince you that you should donate to these charities and help them out or volunteer with them. Although if you did those things, that would also be fantastic. The reason that I brought up these things is because there are probably things that you care about in your life, things that are important to you. And even though we can't have these big, grandiose solutions to problems that exist, we definitely can't solve all the problems at once. There are always small things that we can do to make the world a little bit better. I have these Vedas, I have my stream, and I have the Race Against Time and events like that. And those are not going to solve the issue of trans lives being, frankly, eradicated, or rabbits getting dumped out in the wild, or animals being tested inhumanely on. But it's something that I can do, and that I do to try to make things better. And you probably don't have a big platform, but you do have people in your life. You have communities, and those are things that you can leverage and make small, deliberate actions to try to make things better. I'm here to convince you that there are things that you should care about some things, and you should try to make things better and not give in to cynicism and just accept that things have to be terrible, because they don't have to be. A really good quote that this reminds me of that I'm going to leave off on today, and I want to do it justice, so I'm going to read it off of my phone. And also because I don't feel like crying anymore. Be soft. Do not let the world make you hard. Do not let pain make you hate. Do not let the bitterness steal your sweetness. Take pride that even though the rest of the world may disagree, you still believe it to be a beautiful place. Okay, that was a little bit heavy. That hit a lot harder than I expected. Tomorrow, in a less heartfelt example, we're going to talk about the magical world of podcasting. Today, I'm going to talk about the different Unless someone like you cares a whole lot. Unless someone like you cares a whole lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. That was Matt Berry doing this whatever the the voice is. Unless... Okay, there we go. We did it. We did the thing.